How's everybody doing today? Everybody can hear me okay? Cool. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about leadership and how to manage and lead your people, ultimately kind of how to motivate today's workforce, talk about some of the things through my experience that I've seen on what motivates people today, the traditional beliefs of buying a home and settling down and having this retirement plan and working towards 20 years and all those type of things has definitely shifted for the next generation of employees and workers and then the leaders that they become. So we'll go over that and talk about that a little bit. This is our company and our staff. This is everybody. The name of my company is Inova, and I'm the director of operations for them. So I like to start with this slide mainly because the biggest thing that we do at Inova and the biggest thing that we do for our people at Inova is to create goals, create expectations, and then make all that as simple as we possibly can. So as a company, as a culture, our number one objective is to grow our people. And it's a two-way street. So basically, we will put in as much effort and as much time with the person as they're willing to put in with us and work through that. So always our main goal is to grow our people and make sure that we're focused towards growing our people and growing our culture. The second part of that is doing everything we possibly can to make every single procedure, every response, everything we do as simple as possible. Not overcomplicating it, not trying to have a sense of entitlement with overcomplicating things or making things distracting so it looks like we're doing a great job. No, we just want to make everything we do as simple as possible. So just to show you guys a little bit of what we make, we do high-end Murphy beds for the hospitality and commercial industries. And then a small slide of how our factory operation runs. So this for us is at full capacity. One of the things that we're always doing is looking at not having our people running around, not having chaos happening in our facility, not a bunch of waste, all these different types of things happening. So one of the biggest ways that we grow our people is, again, eliminating all the obstacles in their way and making sure we have a calm environment that everybody can actually utilize their brains and make educated decisions. So I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years, got out of high school, went in the Marine Corps. I was an infantry machine gunner in the Marine Corps, and my second deployment, I finally got tagged and got injured and had to come home and have surgery and go through all of that. And I was looking at how in the world I was ever going to take being a machine gunner and translate that to the civilian world and the civilian environment. I started doing woodworking as a way of kind of going through and helping me from a therapeutic standpoint, work through PTSD and other issues and things like that I had, and had developed a pretty decent knack for it and wanted to do what most people want to do is start that basement woodworking shop and sell all my heirloom quality furniture for tens of thousands of dollars, and I quickly found out that wasn't going to happen. So I applied for a job, kind of learn the business and work for it. And I applied to Inova and wanted to just get my foot in the door, kind of see what was going on. And the plant manager at the time said something to me about them needing leadership, and they were desperate for leadership. And where I had always focused on just being this infantry machine gunner that came out of the Marine Corps and no applicable skill set to a civilian environment, he actually enlightened me that I have tons of leadership through being a Marine and leading other Marines and doing all those type of things. And I realized on that day that was the most valuable thing that I can contribute to, number one, the company that I work for, and hopefully to other people. So that's that. So as a company, in 2017 or last year, we were awarded Disney Supplier of the Year. We're still kind of getting over that and understanding how that actually occurred. That's at 35,000 vendors, and we're super, super, super proud of it. 2017, we were top 100 woodworking companies. 2016, we were as well. In 2016, we were also the People's Choice Award for People Magazine, and 2016, I was awarded the 40 Under 40. So what we're going to discuss and what we're going to talk about today isn't just some theory or some thought. When I first started at Inova, we had an 80% turnover rate. We were making, I believe, $250,000 in sales, and it was a complete mess. To date, we have a 2% turnover rate. Our company grosses $16 million in sales, and it is absolutely a fantastic place to work. So some of the things we're going to discuss today: creating a prosperous and motivated culture, taking stock in your staff and interviewing, being goal-oriented so your employees are on board with you, empowering those employees and how to empower them, staying in our lane and really talking about what leadership is about, or the servant type of leadership, continuous improvement or marginal gains, training, and then maybe a discussion on where to start or how to start and how to start tackling some of these things. The other thing I asked for today is big ears and big eyes. It's very easy for us to criticize, push down on things, and potentially, find the negative in everything we go about. But in reality, we're here to learn. We want to understand the value that can come from this and then try to apply it. So all I ask is that everybody has big ears and big eyes and is open to different things or things outside of your box. And then the more important thing is please ask questions. Cut me off in the middle of a sentence, whatever you want to do. I find it much more valuable when we are going over your issues, your concerns, your successes, the different things that everybody is dealing with. We're all very unique, but it's amazing how similar everybody is. So if you're having an issue or a problem or you're trying to tackle something, I guarantee you 50% of the rest of the people in this place are trying to do that as well. So please ask questions whenever you have one.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Were you a style shop when you started working there?
We were not.
That's part of it being part of the growth.
Well, so we purchased machinery in order to grow. So we had POs that required us to need to expand. We were 18,000 square feet when I first started. We had an old Brandt edge bander, a Bucey machine that probably had a 5 millimeter tolerance as far as where it would put holes in, and a really old Mayer panel saw, and just a bunch of work in progress all over the place. And today we're 72,000 square feet, and we have the facility that you see there. So we were just having a little bit of discussion. To go off topic for a second, we never look as machines as something that we need to purchase and we need to run them 100% of the time because that's how they're going to gain value back for us. The way that we look at machines is basically as an opportunity or a tool or a resource in order to supplement our staff. So when we bring in a second panel saw or a second edge bander or potentially an IntelliStore unit that manages our sheet material and things, we never look at it from a standpoint like, okay, we're going to bring this in and we have to make sure this thing is cutting a board 100% of the time. What we want to do is make sure that whoever is running that machine and cutting those boards, it is giving them enough time so that they can critically think, focus on quality for our customer, and ultimately, if we're having to run our machines 100% of the time, we're in a failure state. And we're actually overburdening our staff, overburdening our company, and whenever we're doing that, we start to downtick and ultimately have more quality control issues, more employee issues, those type of things. Thank you for the question. So taking stock in our staff and interviewing. It's the first step, absolutely, in building the right culture. So Good to Great is an incredible book, and it talks about this in great length, but the right people on the bus. So number one, you have to understand that you've got this factory, this bus, this shop, this thing that's running down the road. And you need to make sure that the people that are in the seats on that bus for yourself are the right people. And we'll get into it, and that's going over goals and talking about your goals and things like that, but really understanding who it is that you need in your facility, why you want them in your facility, and then making sure that you're putting them into the best position in your facility. And ultimately, a lot of people, when I first started, I thought I knew where the best, spots were to put people inside their facility. But in reality, this is where you have to take a step back and you have to talk to your staff, understand what their wants are, what their focuses are, what their motivations are, and then work with them or grow them in an opportunity to get them in those seats. Because once you have a person that's motivated in a particular thing and it's something that they're excited about and they want to do, and you get out of their way, they'll blow your mind. They'll take that position over, they'll go light years beyond what you could ever imagine for that position, and they'll really take that ownership in it. So the other part about that is understanding that negative impact on your culture that you have. And I think about the same person every time I talk about this, but we had the CNC operator that basically whined and complained and just was such a negative influence and impact on every single person in our area. It was crazy. We never got rid of him because he was the only one that knew how to run the CNC machine. And oh my gosh, what are we going to do if we get rid of him, because now we're not going to be able to do this or we're not going to be able to do that. I guarantee you, if you get rid of the negative impact, and I would almost guarantee that in every single company there is a person like that, if you get rid of that person, it will dramatically change the environment for everybody else in that facility. And I promise you, whatever that thing is that they're special about, or they've put the magic fairy dust on or something like that and made it seem like nobody else on the planet can do it better than them, it's complete crap. It's a step, it is a process, it is something that anybody can learn. And the second you rip that Band-Aid off, you'll probably find out that they weren't doing that great of a job to begin with, and there's a lot of skeletons in the closets and a lot of things that you can improve on.
We've had that too, and some good people rise up when they're gone. You find out they oppress other people.
No, they do, and honestly, you might even think you understand the impact that person is having. But when I got rid of our person, it was actually 2 to 3 times worse than I had expected. Not everybody's willing to express their concern or their discontent with a person or things like that. There's a lot of people that bury it way down and it literally affects their performance, and you never have any idea about it. And the second you do get rid of them, it really does. Everybody else starts to come back up, the positivity gets going, the creativity gets going, and it just has such a dramatic impact. So interviewing. Interviewing is always a very, very funny thing for me. It's kind of like going on a first date, but then right after that first date, you're getting married. So there's no second date, there's no third date, there's not a trial period, 3-4 months where you guys go out and hang out and then eventually decide to live together and then you tie the knot. Basically, when we're hiring for the factory, maybe we do 2 or 3 interviews for an engineer or an office person or something like that. But in reality, in the factory, you're literally talking to a person maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then you're either saying yes or no. Hey, we're going to bring you into our facility. We're going to let you be a part of our culture, a part of our process, and you're stuck with them. And you take that 30 to 45 minutes and basically are saying yay or nay to somebody that's either going to impact your culture in a positive way or a very negative way. So I always find it very interesting when we kind of go through the normal routine of standard questions and we look at work history and all these different types of things, and we ask for 3 references. I don't know a person on the planet that's ever going to give a bad reference or somebody that's going to talk bad about them. But just kind of the stereotypical way that we go through our interviewing process just doesn't seem right. Because again, we're about to bring this person into our facility, into our family, into our team, into our culture, whatever we want to call it. And ultimately, we need to make sure we've dug down more. So interviewing for me isn't about understanding and trying to get all this feedback and see how they answer questions. I think most can agree. We would know within about a 5 to 10 minute period of meeting a person if they're going to be the right fit for our company, right? Ultimately, I can look through and I understand work history, and as long as you haven't worked in like 50 places and you're not quitting your job and going somewhere else every 3 months, you're okay. The other part is that you have that great attitude and great aptitude, which we'll get a little bit more into before. But I know, within 5-10 minutes, hey, this person's going to fit in. The rest of that interviewing process is describing who we are as a company. And not selling ourselves, not, kind of putting the wool over their eyes or trying to fluff our situation. It's about being extremely honest about who we are and what we do, our trials, our concerns, our issues, all those different types of things. So when this person starts on the first day, there's no question. There's no question of what they're doing. They're not like, oh wow, these guys do this, or oh wow, these guys do that. We've gone over it. The interviewing process is your opportunity to, vent and make sure that it's the right fit for you. But again, 5 to 10 minutes, you understand that. The rest of the time is to make sure that they understand what they are getting themselves into. And ultimately, you're removing that opportunity for a person to say, hey, I didn't know about this or I didn't know about that, and set off on the wrong foot. They basically get to come in. Either they think you're full of crap or something and they find out and they're gone within 1 to 2 days, or they're completely on board, they understand what they're getting into, and they move on. And the biggest thing that I have seen with this interviewing type of strategy or hiring strategy is that literally if a person is not the right fit, they last for about a day or two. And then they'll come into my office and say, hey, this just isn't for me, thank you, and thank you, and we move on about our ways. We don't spend 2, 3, 4 months training them, putting time and effort into them, only for the inevitable to happen because we didn't do a good enough job up front making sure that we were clear about our expectations and who we are as a company. And it works out really well. The other big thing is the type of people that we're looking for when we're hiring. So I said, within 5 to 10 minutes, we know what we're looking for. We've simplified kind of our criteria for how we hire people from the standpoint of we just look at your attitude and your aptitude. I want a person that's a self-starter, motivated, ready to come in, willing to work, and then has that aptitude to learn the things that they potentially need to learn. Now I know today's craze is a big thing about needing more employees and not being able to find skilled labor and do all these type of things, and it's true. But it's a reality. There isn't skilled labor out there, at least not where I am. There just isn't the skilled labor out there. So we can whine and complain about it, or we can understand that it isn't there, and how do we get it? Well, unfortunately, until colleges start picking up manufacturing and high schools bring the wood shops back into their curriculum and do all those type of things, the burden's on us. And that's okay, because now you have an opportunity to actually train a person the way that you want them to work in your environment. So if you have a person with a good attitude and great aptitude, then you're already set up for success. Now all you have to do is focus on making sure that you have a good training environment, that you're not constantly putting out fires and doing all those type of things, and ultimately getting your employees behind you and allowing them to be motivated, which we'll talk about. We'll start to eliminate those fires and those issues. Get the good training in place, and you become the person that gets the skilled labor, that makes the skilled labor, and you move on from there. Any questions on that stuff? Cool.
How many employees do you have?
We have 54. When I started, we had 18. Over the last 2 years, I think we've hired another 22 people.
Where'd you find them?
So most of them are from the culinary institutes or culinary background. They were chefs or cooks or dishwashers, and there's probably, I think I have 2 people in my facility that actually come from a woodworking background. And it's amazing because they're not inside the box. We'll go over this in a little bit, but ultimately they don't, they haven't been scorned by 20 years in the woodworking industry, and they don't have all that baggage and kind of all that frustration behind them that a lot of people in the woodworking industry seem to have at times. And it's really great because they've got, big eyes, big ears, fresh perspectives, and they actually, contribute a lot and bring a lot because we've been doing it the same way for so long. So it's really nice to kind of have a diverse culture and people from different backgrounds because it really helps us out. So creating goals. The reason we create goals as a company is to make sure that we have clear expectations and that our employees have a clear understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve. Now, long-term goals are potentially, different type of markets and things like that that you want to get into. Short-term goals might be like trying to bring a training facility into your area or something of that nature. And then immediate goals are, hey, I'm going to stop making excuses today and I'm going to make this happen. And I'm going to get people in here, we're going to start training, we're going to start doing the things that we need to do, and we're going to make this work. But setting up these goals, getting these long-term goals, kind of like intermediate type goals and things like that, and then explaining it to your staff and your people is just fundamentally the best thing to do. Get you all on the same page, get you all on the same understanding, and basically gives you a guide to work towards and for everybody to focus on and work towards as well. So a small clip right before we start empowering our employees. So most jobs we're in are very task-oriented. Everything we do is task-oriented. Come in, kind of do the same thing, put your head down, go to work. You start to fall behind. Here's our leader, AKA supervisor, that just wants to yell and scream, tell us to hurry up and do all those type of things. But in reality, there's absolutely zero empowerment going on there. And obviously this is a very extreme version of that, but this happens in our facilities all the time. It happens in my facility all the time. We get in and we just become extremely task-oriented on things, and we never look at how do we hold our employees accountable, how do we make them responsible, but ultimately, how do we empower them? So the biggest way that I have found to empower one of my employees is to let them fail. And the reason why I need to let them fail is not for them, although it is a very valuable thing for them, it's more for me. In the Marine Corps, as a leader, basically you say jump, they jump. Instant willingness to obedience and orders, bottom line. That is what you do. So when I came out of the Marine Corps, you just tell everybody what to do. It's what you're trained to do. That's what you have to do. You're there to make sure you're literally putting out firefights sometimes and going through those type of things. But in reality, when we're a manager of a department or we're owner of a company or something like that, and we have the mentality that we have to put out every fire, or we never give somebody an opportunity to fail, we slide in right before it happens and things like that, we've basically taken, all of the autonomy away from that person. We've just completely disabled their ability to actually critically think and make decisions. So when you're constantly putting out fires, when you're constantly stopping your people from failing, you're never giving them the opportunity to actually learn. So, a person who makes a $5, $10 mistake, let's say we have somebody on our assembly line that's doing something wrong when they're assembling something and they ruin a part. I could see that part is potentially going to get ruined, but it is more valuable for them to ruin that part and then be able to understand how it was ruined and for them to make that fix than for me to constantly come in and do that. Because what happens is you're no longer a manager. We don't have the time to train people. We complain about there not being any skilled labor, but it's because as management, as owners, as leaders, we're just constantly putting out fires. So, it's the age-old thing of basically while everybody's working in that 8-hour day, I'm running around putting out fires, and then everybody always says, I have to work late because I can only get my job done once everybody's gone. So when you have a firefighter mentality, or you're constantly in there and you're just constantly taking over and taking away from the value of your employees and not giving them the opportunity to fail, you're basically robbing them as the opportunity to learn and move on from that. And ultimately, you're taking a ton of time away from yourself from being able to do more proactive things about, looking at your bottom line, understanding what machinery could potentially help your company, understanding what benefits you could do, your training, all those different types of things you can't do because you're just running around solving everybody's problems all day long. The reason why that usually happens is because we don't have trust in our employees. There is no trust. Nobody does it better than me. And I am the only one that can do it, and I don't trust anybody else to get it done. So if it's going to get done, I'm going to be the one that has to get it done, right? How many times have you said that? I've said that probably 100,000 times in my life. If this truck's going to go out the door, if this order is going to get handled, if this sale is going to get made, I got to be the one to do it because nobody else can do it. We've just taken all the trust away. And if we're saying that, then why are those people in our facilities? If we can't trust anybody in our facility to actually do their job, then why are they there? You're better off just getting rid of everybody and doing it all yourself. It won't be fun and it'll go away really quick. But in reality, if you don't have trust or you don't give the opportunity for people to show that they can do their job, then why are they there? So we have to trust our employees that they're going to do a good job. And then we have to come in on the back end when they fail and make sure we give them the pat on the back And ultimately, we have them involved in our decision-making process of how we get it solved and how we get it fixed. They'll start to learn, they'll feel more involved in the process, more involved in the actual autonomy of the company and how things are getting handled, and they'll be a part of that process. So decision-making, voice being heard. Today's generation doesn't work the 80, 90-hour weeks, doesn't work the 60, 70-hour weeks. They want to come in, they want to work 40 hours, they want to go home. If they have a young family, they want to spend time with their family. If not, most of my people want to go kayaking, snowboarding, and go do whatever the heck they do when they're out of work. But wanting to work 50, 60 hours a week isn't in their DNA. It's not in their blood anymore. We do a Monday through Thursday shift, 7 to 5:30, 410s we call it. They get 3 days off. They love it. And in those 4 days, we get everything we need to get done. When we need to run overtime, we run it on a Friday, and everybody still gets their weekend. The reason why we did that is because we run overtime. I don't want to hire more people when I can have a little bit of overtime, get through that little peak that we have, and then go back to normal. So we all know we've got to be able to run overtime sometimes. But when I would run overtime on a Saturday, I could never get anybody to show up. And I'm scratching my head wondering why. Everybody's getting paid time and a half. This should be great. You get to make money. It's not what motivates them. They would rather have that Saturday off to spend doing what they want to do. And ultimately, you're not helping their situation, because if they're working 6 days a week and you're busting everybody's butt and they're exhausted, that morale starts to get lower and lower and lower, and then that's where turnover starts to happen and people stop showing up and all those things that occur. So again, we can either push back and say, this is crazy, in my day I did 70, 80, 90 hours a week, this is nuts, nobody wants to work anymore, nobody cares, blah, 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 but that's not the case. They care immensely. And if you set them up properly, you give them the autonomy, the opportunity to fail, you trust them, in that 40-hour work week, they'll blow your mind. And they'll do an incredible job during that time frame. So getting back to the decision-making aspect of it, they want to be a part of that process. That's what actually motivates them. They want to know that they've had say in it. So one of the things that we do at our company, and I know this gets a little crazy at times, so big eyes, big ears, but we give an hour every morning to our entire staff to work on anything they want, non-production related. You're not allowed to look at your emails, you're not allowed to focus on an order, engineers aren't allowed to design anything, project management can't start getting things out to customers so we can get approvals. Production absolutely cannot work on a production part or do anything like that. They have to physically go in there for an hour and what we call fix what bugs you. And they have to physically go in there and improve their processes. It's our way of letting their voice be heard. I don't build pallets all days. I don't run the accounting department. I'm not the one making sure that our bank accounts are reconciled and doing all those type of things. Those are all the people that we've hired and entrusted to do those jobs. So I'm not going to be the one that's constantly going in and telling them how to do their job better, or this is what they need to do, that's what they need to do. They know how to do it. And they absolutely have things that frustrate them and things that they would love to be able to fix. And you've got to give them the opportunity to do it. You've got to give them the opportunity to be a part of that decision. So the hardest part with all that is usually releasing the control. So when we get into leadership positions or management positions, there's usually kind of that control freak, OCD person that's behind us that likes to make sure everything's right. And ultimately, we probably all did a really good job when we first started, which is what's led us to that. Or the other thing is, you started this company in your basement or in your garage, and you've worked your butt off to get it to where it needs to be, and it's literally your baby that you're now having to actually let go of a little bit. And I get it, that's hard to do. The control factor in that is so hard to do. But we're only one person, we're only two people. So if you want to scale your company and you want to be able to grow, then you have to release some of that control. You've got to be able to, again, let your people fail. Trust them. Make sure they're a part of the decision making. And let them help you. The greatest part is that they want to. When we get out of their way, that is exactly what motivates them. They are all about being part of that decision, and they truly care about it. Sure, you're going to have your people that are just bad eggs and they don't care. But that's that whole interviewing process, attitude, aptitude. Once you got the right people on the bus and you've got the right type of attitudes in there, I'm telling you, these people want to help. You just have to get out of their way and release some of the control. Any questions on anything? We're all doing okay? Nobody sleeping? All right. So what type of leader are you? Are you the guy that sits behind, guy or gal that sits behind the desk and just waits for something to happen so you can grab that big proverbial club you have in the corner and beat somebody over the head with it? Or are you the person that actually tries to help the situation and has that servant type of mentality? A lot of us get a kind of an ego trip or a chip on our shoulder when we get into a management type position. We think, this authority and, you better do as I say or listen to me and all these different types of things. And ultimately, that's not what leadership is about. That's not what being a manager is about. That's not what being a director is about. That's not what being an owner is about. You are there to make sure that all these people that are busting their butt all day long so that we can be in the positions we're in have everything that they absolutely need in order to get the job done. That is my sole purpose in my company, is to make sure that everybody who's doing this incredible job has absolutely everything they need in order to do that job properly. And when they fail, I don't come in with an axe and chop their knees out. I come in with a hand on their back and how do I help you fix your problem so that it doesn't happen again? You have to have a servant type of mentality. And you have to make sure that your people come first. That is the bottom line. It's not about you anymore. It's like having kids, literally. Once you have kids, it's about them. It's about nurturing them, growing them, making sure they get to the right schools, good neighborhoods, good school districts, all those type of things. Our staff and our employees are no different. They're literally like, I don't mean to call them children by any means, but for lack of a better example, they are. There are people that we're trying to grow. There are people that we're trying to help invest in to make sure that they're doing the best job they can. And ultimately, why wouldn't we? We're paying them all this money to do it. It's crazy to come in, chop out their knees, take their control away from them, and not give them the opportunity to actually do that. So servant leadership is so powerful. Sometimes we have to shift our brain. It's not us there to make knee-jerk reaction and decisions and do all those type of things. We're there to make sure they have everything they need and answer questions and just be a support network. So we do that. This is a lean term. We're big lean gurus, and I know there's a lot of lean other talks and things like that, so I don't get into it in great detail. But if anybody does have any lean things, we are lean maniacs, that's for sure. But showing your back. Showing your back comes from Toyota, and it's what all of the Toyota leaders do. They call it going to Gemba or getting to the shop floor. And when a person comes into your office and says, hey, I screwed this up or I did this, don't sit in your office and come up with a decision or go through with them. Go to where it actually occurred. Show your back. Go to the shop floor. Go to that person's desk. Run through that process. Seek to understand first, then to be understood, right? And you can't do that when you're sitting in your chair at your desk. 100% cannot do it. You have to go to the source of your problem and make sure that you're there working with your person doing that. And that might mean in the pallet section of your factory, or, wherever the case may be. You've got to go to the source of the problem, and you've got to show your back. And then staying in our lane. So staying in our lane is one of the things I talk about, because when you start to create a really creative culture and you give people autonomy and all these type of things, they start to bounce around quite a bit, and it can get a little hectic at times. So one of the big things that we focus on is, this is your portion of the process. This is what I'm here for. This is what you're here for. This is what you're here for. As the director of operations, I'm not here to run the accounting department. I'm not here to take over my production supervisor's job. I'm not here to harass my foreman and do his job for him. I stay in my lane, and I make sure that they stay in their lanes. You're here for a position. This is what you're here to do. Continuously improve on this position, and let's all work together and all do our part of the function in order for us to be this big, happy wheel that we have going. So we got to stay in our lanes. So continuous improvement. Continuous improvement goes back to empowering our employees. You've got to give them the opportunity to improve. And we do that with an hour every morning, every single day. We've done it since October 5th, 2015, and it's the most incredible thing we've ever done. I know that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, and probably dollar signs are calculating and average employee wage and, oh my gosh, 4 hours a week over da-da-da-da and all that stuff. Yeah, we spend a ton of money to let people continuously improve for 1 hour a day. We don't care. Because the amount of improvement that we get out of that hour outweighs and is one of the greatest investments we've ever made.
When you came on, it sounds like there was a pretty incredible culture shift. How did you get the leeway from an existing company to open up to that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I've been lucky enough to forge a really good relationship with the owner of my company. He still to this day does not understand lean, which is actually really crazy. And I spend a lot of my time being the barrier between him and the rest of our staff. But he's one of the most generous people I've ever met. And so when I talk about kind of the attitude to have, he doesn't get it and he doesn't understand it, but at the same time, he's very curious, he's very understanding, and he gives me the leeway. And ultimately, he understands the value in staying out of my way and letting me flourish and let me do my thing versus constantly blocking me or shooting down this idea or not letting me fail or all the things we've kind of been talking about. So I've been very, very fortunate enough to have a really good relationship with the owner of our company. And it's been very prosperous. And it's kind of nice having that little bit of a yin and yang because, literally we have been doing our morning meetings and our hour improvement time for almost 3 years now. And to this day, he'll still ask me about the morning improvement hour. Like, are we sure we're doing the right thing? I'm like, sir, are you kidding me? It's crazy and it's funny, but it's a really good yin and yang because it keeps that creativity alive and making sure that we're constantly moving forward and we're constantly learning and doing those type of things.
Question.
Yeah.
Is that cleanup time too? Do they use it? What are some other examples they use that time for?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll get into that for a little bit. That first hour for us, October 5th, 2015, what we did was any cleaning staff, outside cleaning staff, I'll say kicked them out. Basically, we told them, thank you for your job, but we're going to take care of it ourselves. And we basically took over all the cleaning ourselves. In our bathrooms, in our kitchens, in our offices, in our factories, everywhere. So we have standards that are put in place, and we have people every 2 weeks, it rotates, and somebody else does it. And we've got these really nice, beautiful standards that are up on the wall, and the person's picture is right there, who's responsible for it. And we basically take care of it all ourselves. We also have cleaning duties within the factory. We call it 3S'ing, and making sure that our cleaning duties are taken care of. And we just have a standard or a level of cleanliness that we want to have in our facility. And I mean, it is amazing how immaculate our facility is. And it's one of the greatest things ever because it has all this underlying value. Number one, nobody's tripping over things. There's safety issues that are just completely gone that we don't think about anymore. Nobody's searching around for this tool or this part and all this crazy stuff and people running around, they can't find this, can't find that, and just all this waste that occurs is completely gone just because we take that time. And then once that has been taken care of, the rest of that time is literally going to improvements and is all about improvements. And we're not talking about reinventing the wheel every single time. We are talking about small improvements. Like if I had to walk to the other side of this table to go to the trash can, a person might bring the trash can right to here. And just simple things that make their process easier, literally easier. And that's what it's about. We want to make it easier so they're less burdened, so they're less exhausted when they go home. Our quality goes through the roof. Our profit margins go through the roof. Our customer base continues to increase based off of word of mouth. We have one salesperson, and it's basically to field the calls that we get, but because we never have any issues or complaints from our customers because our quality is just so impeccable. So they're constantly referring us. So that first hour, again, has just an immense amount of value to us. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Do you ever have team members that run out of things to do and say, I don't know what else to improve, and then
Absolutely.
how do you handle it?
Sure. Yeah, so it gets exhausting to improve at times. And asking a person to improve for that hour every single day, all the time, literally every single day, it gets exhausting. So again, when we talk about that servant leadership type of thing, it's my job, my responsibility and I work with my leadership team, but it's our job to stay ahead of the curve, continue and keep the motivation going, do all those type of things. Come back to it. We'll have weeks where we'll focus on one particular aspect and kind of like re-jog everybody's memory. But we also do, after our hour, 30 minutes of a morning meeting, and a different person leads that meeting every single day. And we do a lesson of the day, we do a part of the day, we go over our improvements, we go over our mistakes. That person talks about what they're grateful for. We all give a review on how they did. And for us, it's an incredible way, and it's impacted our culture immensely because now everybody has this sympathy or respect for one another. And that's a huge, huge deal for us because we're not quick to go in and start to blame another person and they did this and oh my gosh, he screwed that up and she went crazy and da-da-da. It's not about that. My leadership group and my supervisors and team leaders know when they come into my facility, they're not allowed to use a person's name. Like when they come in to go over a problem or go over an issue, they're not allowed to use a person's name. They can't say we, you, I, me, none of that. It doesn't happen because we just focus on that process and we take the person out of it because our knee-jerk reaction when something happens is to start blaming the person and then we start to lose respect for one another. So that's where that morning meeting comes in. Our project manager blew my mind. This was probably 8 months or so now. But she's like, I really love the morning meetings because Ron, who builds our pallets, I would never know who he was. And she's our project manager, and Ron builds our pallets. And they're like on two different ends of our spectrum of our company. And literally, they eat lunch together, they talk, she knows about things, he knows about things. Like our entire staff knows so much about each other that nobody from the factory ever comes in guns blazing at our engineers because our engineers screwed something up. Or vice versa, our project manager doesn't fly out into the factory and start screaming at our supervisors out there because a customer just called and they missed a screw or something like that. We all work towards solving a problem and getting a solution versus focusing on kind of covering our butts and how many emails did we write and making sure we're, not chucking ourselves under the rug. Thank you for the question. So, Toyota production system obviously stems from word Kaizen, comes from the Toyota production system. Kaizen is a big thing for us, mainly from the fact that continuous improvement is just everything that we're about. Making those small improvements, doing those small improvements, getting in there, and then all the value that comes behind that of people actually having the autonomy to do them, us having the ability to hold them accountable. So when we kind of wipe out the gray area and everybody just knows that that's what they're supposed to do, you have a big leg to stand on when you do have to do some corrective action or you do need to discipline or one of those type of things, right? Because we all know what we're supposed to do. It's very simple. You're either improving, you're either raising the red flag because you're burnt out and you can't improve, or something is going on of that effect. But if you're not doing it and you're kind of just being lackluster or off in the corner, then that's not okay. And that's where we come in and make sure that we're doing the motivation behind it. The other big part about continuous improvement and everybody doing continuous improvement is like the bicycle. So there's a really great story, and I don't, anybody's a big cycler here or not. The Froome and the Sky team, they do a great marginal gain or continuous improvement on all of their bicycles. And it's not just the engineers on their team that do it. It's not just upper management that does it. Every single person in there makes a critique on the bicycles that they use, and they actually all do improvements to their bicycles. And it's the reason why Chris Froome and his Sky team have been able to win the Tour de France 4 times. And it's such an incredible thing about why it's so important. The traditional or more traditional type of way that we do improvements is either management thinks about it or engineering thinks about it, and then they come down and they say, hey, this is what we have to do. So in reality, you think you're doing improvements, but you're not. You're just telling another person what to do, and they're just doing it and putting their head down and going the Charlie Chaplin route and just being task-oriented and getting it done. If you don't just have your engineers and your upper level constantly doing your improvements and everybody's doing them, then that autonomy and that responsibility comes flooding back in and is a part of it. So training. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but basically it's the most important thing you can do in your facility for your people in order to grow them, in order to be a part of it. But one of the biggest things on how we train people is not to be that easy target. How many times you had the same person come up to you, ask you the same question, like 6, 7 times, right? Why in the world do you keep answering that question? If a person comes to you 6 times and asks you the same question, you answer it 6 times, what are you doing? You're just being an easy target. So a lot of people want to do the easy thing. They don't want to have the responsibility. They'll go to you because they'll know that you'll take the responsibility off of them. And they'll ask you those questions and they'll do those type of things, right? And you become the easy target because you're just putting out fires all day and you're making knee-jerk reactions and you're not investigating anything. And ultimately, you just continue to answer that question. Boom, 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 boom. You're being such an easy target. Whereas if you start to hold people accountable and you make them accountable for their processes and they come up and ask you the question and you say, hey, you asked me this question last time. I want you to go back and figure it out this time. Stop coming to me for all the answers because you don't want to take the time and the ability to actually retain that knowledge yourself. So make sure during training you're not being an easy target and allowing people to just kind of push that responsibility off of themselves. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it isn't. It just kind of happens occasionally. And then we have to focus on the process, not the person. Absolutely. That is number one. So our leadership group, I meet with our leadership team for about an hour once a week, 6 or 7 people. There's been tons and tons of studies that go over the fact that people don't leave their jobs because they're not getting paid enough or this or that. People leave their jobs and quit their jobs because they hate their boss or they can't stand their boss or their managers stink or something like that goes on. So we have 7 leaders in our facility that run our factory and our engineering staff and our department, and we meet and we get together and I work with them and I grow them and I teach them and we talk about how to be better leaders and servant leadership and what that means and making sure that they're on the positive side of everything. But the biggest thing I do to them is I make them focus on the process and not the person, which is kind of what we talked about. Nobody gets to come in and say he, she, I, they, nobody's names, none of that stuff, because we are process oriented. If a person is making a mistake, there's a bad process in your system. It is not the person. And I think you have to go through an immense amount of investigation before you ever consider, number one, disciplining somebody, or number 2, getting rid of somebody. And ultimately, you might have a person that just isn't getting it, isn't a part of your values or your quality or whatever the case is, but man, you can use them in a very positive way. Because that is the person that's going to try to find every loophole or shortcut or something swept under the rug in your system. And if you have good leadership behind that and they're focused on the process, they're going to button down that system and make that system perfect. And once that happens, then you can go that disciplinary route. Then you can go, the potential worst case scenario of getting rid of something or something like that. But there's 2 things that happen with the process. And if a person isn't following it, it's probably because the process sucks. And it's miserable and it's hard to do and all those type of things, which is why you have to go to Gemba, have to go to the floor. You've got to sit down, you've got to take a look at that process, you've got to go through it and see if it's legitimate or not. Or, be honest with yourself and be like, wow, this is really convoluted and complicated and man, we can absolutely simplify this dramatically and make this better for you. And the second you do that, most people get in it and they start picking it up and they start taking care of it. New people. A lot of the times new people are kind of, they show up, they get chucked with a training supervisor or something like that and put off into a hole and we don't really think about them. But they're extremely unique because it doesn't matter how great your culture is, everybody starts to think and work and kind of do the same thing the same way. For us, we've got a great culture, but we're also inside our own little box. So we think inside of our box and do all those type of things. A new person, totally outside perspective. And we literally treat them like they're a unicorn when they walk into our facility because they don't have our blinders. They haven't put on our blinders that we've put on over time and time and time of doing this over and over again, and you just get complacent or used to something. So we treat our new people like gold. We bring them around, we look at different processes with them, we train them, we teach them about our culture, our ideas, and what makes us tick and our values and all those different types of things. And then we step back and we ask them a million questions. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And was that easy or was that not easy? And all these different types of things. And the amount of feedback that you get from a person that is brand new is so great. Some of our best improvements have come from people that literally had just started in our facility because they were thinking outside the box, because they weren't inside, our little groove, our little movement of how we do things and just, being complacent because that's the way we've always done it. And then, yeah, never stop learning. One of my biggest challenges, and one of the things that becomes a grind for me, going back to your question about, does it ever get kind of unmotivating to do all that continuous improvement all the time? Never stop learning is one of those big things, because I always feel, and at least where I currently am, that I kind of need be a little bit ahead of the curve as far as where I'm at in my lean knowledge, where I'm at as far as my motivational goes, where I'm at from a servant standpoint, all those type of things. You have to make sure you're constantly learning, constantly absorbing, constantly doing that. And one of the biggest ways of being able to do that is big eyes and big ears. So if we're negative and we're constantly shooting things down and we don't have big eyes and big ears, then we're never going to learn. But man, you can find value in every single thing that you do, and then you can take that back and you can literally surge that energy into your company and make it better. All right, so just a quick recap. We went over creating prosperous, motivated culture, taking stock in the staff and interviewing, being goal-oriented so our employees are on board, empowering our employees, continuous improvement or marginal gains, and then training, what we just went over. Any questions before we go into where to start?
How about the whole, we get busy, so we pause? I mean, we've had a lot of that.
Oh, you make the justification because you're too busy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get buried, and all of a sudden the meetings slide, or we need, even when you guys have your meetings, what do you do with phone calls and when people show up?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and that's kind of the biggest thing is sustainment. So sustainment's one of your 3 S's. And as the leader, I've had 2 trucks sitting in the back while we're doing our morning improvement time, and my supervisors are like, losing their minds, and I'm like, absolutely not. There's nothing more important to us than that hour improvement time and those morning meetings. Everything else, the world can stop for an hour and a half. That's the bottom line for us. And it was very hard up front, the sustainment aspect of it. Luckily, we never had anything, we had been extremely busy in all these different types of things. We never wavered from it. I think if we had ever wavered from it, people would see the weakness and then they do it. One of the biggest things that happens is, in a lot of companies, you're trying this and you're trying that and you're trying that, and it just becomes like the flavor of the month for all of your employees. So in order to actually get buy-in and for people to really be a part of that process and truly, understand it, you have got to go through kind of like that grind period and never waver from it, because, most people are looking at you to waver and they're like, I'm happy that crazy stuff's over with. You know what I mean? And that's how it goes. So you can't. There is no justification why, unless literally the burning builds down, and then we'd probably be across the street just having our morning meeting across the street while it's burning to the ground. Like, there is zero reason not to have it. Yeah, thank you for the question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You mentioned you have 7 leaders. Do you have like somebody in charge of training, somebody in charge of lean itself?
Yeah, so I have Alexi is his name. He's an incredible guy, but he just has an extreme passion for lean. And going back a little bit, I'd say when I first started our lean journey and when we first started changing our culture and all these different types of things, we probably had like 5% of people that had drank the Kool-Aid or whatever you want to call it and were actually invested in it and ready to do it and ready to tackle it. And we probably are about 60% of our people are in it, and the other 40% are just still going through the motion. So, you just want to continue to tip that scale. But going back to your question, Alexi was one of those people that really bought in. He loved it. The guy is crazy. He goes home, he reads books about it. And he is our kind of our lean guru, or our trainer, the person that brings in new people, shows them our philosophies behind it, does all that. So yeah, we have a training person. I've got a foreman that works on all of our machines and kind of goes through personnel issues. We have a production supervisor that takes care of making sure our orders are going through our processes and keeping all that stuff lean. And then we have team leaders and people on our line that do that as well. And that's kind of how that structure works. You had a question? Answered it? Cool, great. Anybody else? All right. So where do we start? Because it's a daunting task and a lot to do. So I put the bathroom as the question mark, but I feel like the bathroom is the most undervalued room in your facility. And I'll tell you, I've been into a lot of woodworking factories when people want me to go there and look at their stuff and see their stuff, and I walk into their bathroom and I'm like, oh man, I think I just caught something. It is very, very dirty, and it's amazing. Because think about it. It's probably the most personal thing you do at work all day is go to the bathroom, right? And when you look at respect and you look at the culture of a company, if a person can't clean up after themselves when they go to the bathroom, and they know that their coworker, their peer, their employees, their bosses, whatever, are going to go in there afterwards and they leave it a mess, think about how much respect there is in that company, in that environment, right? There's none. If a person can't take care of the bathroom, we don't have enough respect to clean up after ourselves when we use the bathroom, then there's a huge cultural issue within that company, which is why that's where we start, is the bathroom. So we started cleaning our bathroom, we started going through, and we started explaining and making sure that our people understood why it's so important for us to clean our bathrooms. And it's not about like, haha, you've got to clean the toilet today. There's an immense amount of respect there. Like, that person wants to create the throne for somebody and make sure that they, whoever has it going down the line, he's respectful of and always leaving an area better than you found it. And it's kind of a really cool place to start, because if you can get people engaged in that, then you're off to the races. And ultimately, it's probably like the smaller portion of your facility, so it's an easier place to start. Going back to sustainment and never actually wavering from that, the worst thing you can do is take on too much, because then it becomes hard to manage, and then and then just things get out of control and you have to waver from it. So you want to start small and make sure that maybe you go back and your immediate goal is like, hey, we're going to start cleaning our bathroom. We're going to start making sure that we're respecting each other and we're going through those things, and let that go for like 2 months. And people start getting it, and then start adding the break room to it, add the office to it, and start going from there. Our company needed a dramatic shift. We needed a 2x4 across our head. Everybody needed to wake the heck up, and we needed to do something. So when I proposed lean to Loren, who's the owner of our company, I was kind of at an ultimatum point. We had a job go out. I literally worked 90 hours that week. I was there till 3 o'clock in the morning, spraying the clothes back, got it on the truck, went home, slept for 2 hours, got on the plane, had to come down to the job site, install it at the job site, and I got back and was like, I'll never do that again. No way. And we had been going back and forth, and he had been pushing on lean and against it, and kind of like our change in our culture and all these different types of things. And I basically said, like, sir, I don't know if you want to keep doing this, but I don't. Life's too short. I would like to have the autonomy and basically for you to get out of the way so I can take care of this. And he agreed. It was kind of like that rock bottom moment for our company. And he said, absolutely, like, it can't be worse than what's going on now. And I said, thank you. And so our way of doing that was literally, we wiped out our cleaning staff, we put our morning meetings in place, we took care of that first hour of improvement. I mean, we did a big cultural shift. So I talk about continuous improvement or small things, because I think that's the easiest way to do it. And depending on the size of your company, that might be the best way of doing it. But if you're a smaller shop and you have the autonomy or the control to be able to do something like that, it's not impossible to start big either. But it's much harder, and you got to have an undying waver in order to make sure that it goes through, because people are going to push back, people aren't going to want to do it, you're going to have those negative influences that you have to make the hard choice about and do all those type of things in order to make happen.
That's with.
When you started doing this, did people try to go around you to the owner and try and get him to waiver on
No. The owner's really good about not kind of undermining me. So he's really good. And one of my very positive attributes from being a leader in the Marine Corps is I don't have any problem with conflict. So if a person has a problem or something like that, I'm not this passive aggressive type of person. I'm 100% transparent, and we'll go over it. So if somebody was to do something like that, I would take care of it almost immediately. So people just know and how I handle going through making sure that I am being 100% honest and 100% upfront with people. We kind of have a good baseline of mutual respect for that. But it does raise a really good point. Being this passive-aggressive type of leader that doesn't like confrontation or can't handle conflict and those type of things, that's gonna stunt your growth quite a bit. Because especially this generation, they almost expect you to be passive-aggressive or kind of like mumble under your breath, or just like, oh, they suck and not do anything about it. And ultimately, like, they're waiting for that. The second you actually check them, you say, hey, listen, I think this is what's going on. Here's what I'm talking about. It really kind of snaps things into perspective, and they have a much better appreciation for you because of that. What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, so you're here this morning, so all of these things are taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. 8:30, they just finished up with the morning meeting. So every day a different person leads it. And one of our, I think Josh led it this morning, and they get to pick.
Overtime today?
What's that?
They're working overtime today?
Oh, our office staff. So our office staff works Monday through Friday. Our factory works Monday through Thursday, office to make sure we're there for customers and all those things. So our office staff does the morning meeting today. Thanks for spot checking me. Yeah. No, it's good. Fact check, I like it.
During the week when, Monday, is the office and production all having a meeting together?
Oh yeah, our entire staff does. If you're in our facility, you're there. If you're a vendor in our facility, you're at our morning meeting. Like, we don't care. If you have a foot inside of our building, you're coming to our meeting, which probably, I didn't think about it, but phone calls not being answered or people not coming in and stuff. Most people just don't come during that time because they probably don't want to be a part of our morning meeting. But yeah, if you're in our facility, you are in that morning meeting.
All your delivery people know not to come.
Yeah, we put signs up on doors. We make it as simple as possible. We're very customer focused and want to make sure that we're being good for our customers and our vendors and all those type of things. So we make it simple, but it takes a little bit of time. But they know we've been doing it for 3 years now, so it's not new to anybody. Great questions. Yes, sir.
The owner of your company, is he at the morning meeting then?
Yes.
He's the biggest detractor from it seems.
Yeah, and that's where do a decent job of making sure that we buffer that. And again, he's a very humble, very generous person. So although he still has internal conflict with it, he's very much a part of it and supports it and understands, the value behind it for sure. So he's a part of the morning meetings and contributes to them and does all that stuff as well, which is really good. But yeah, he's there. When he's there, he's there. Okay, so we talked about sticking with it and making sure we're sustaining our processes and doing those type of things. But kind of the last thing I want to leave you guys with is just one of the things that helped me to change my mindset. Because we always want to make things cheaper. We always want to make things faster. Then maybe we want to make them better. And then, if we can or if it's, convenient, we'll try to make things easier, right? In reality, that needs to be flipped upside down. You need to make everything in your facility as easy as possible or as simple as possible. Make every operation for your employees as simple as possible. Do everything that you can possibly can to streamline and make everything just super, super easy and simple. And when that happens, you have way less burden on your staff, way less burden on your employees, and all of a sudden you'll start to see your product get better, and your quality get better, and your efficiency get better, which means that you become faster. And when things are easy and the quality of your product is increasing and you're becoming more efficient, it will just get cheaper, and your product will cost you less to make. But if we start with the cheaper aspect first, we lose the rest and we lose all the value behind it. So focus on the easier portion of it first, then worry about the cost of it after the fact. All right, so stay positive, stay grateful, stay determined. And I threw up a reading list. The upper portion, or the upper three, the advantage, good to great, bring out the best in the people, is your classic warm and fuzzies. Really dives into kind of your culture, understanding your culture, how to be as a person and how to represent your culture, all those different types of things. If you were to read one out of those, I would say the advantage is probably the most powerful thing you can read from a culture standpoint. And then on the lean side of it, the little bit more technical side of it, is 2-Second Lean, The Toyota Way, and The Goal are great manufacturing books to understand a different way of talking about manufacturing and lean and all the cool stuff that comes behind it. Any other questions about anything? Question time. We are done with the slides.
Part of your transition, though, was tooling and moving into cell-based with styles or whatever that 3 years ago when you started. Is that part of your lean also, is I guess my question.
So from an actual production standpoint, the biggest thing that we did right off the rip was we understood that we had done way too much overproduction. So when we looked at how much WIP we actually had in place, or how much work in progress we actually had in place versus how much actual finished product was happening, the scales were bad. So we had mounds and mounds and mounds and stacks and piles of little panels everywhere. It didn't seem like we could ever get anything done. We were always waiting on engineering, or somebody needed this, but we were more focused on making sure that every machine that we had ran, well, okay, the saw doesn't have anything, so go ahead and get him cutting on that. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was hectic, it was crazy. So the first thing we did was we stopped any new orders coming into our facility, and we worked through everything that we had already chucked into it. And it was hard. It took us literally 5 months to get through all this work. We had put so much work in progress into our system that it literally took 5 months to get through all of it. But we didn't hide anything. We didn't sweep anything under the rug. We dealt with every single issue. We attacked it. Everybody got on board for it. So if we had a job where we had the optimization for, but we didn't have the program drawings from engineering yet, or we didn't have a customer shop drawing sign off or something like that, we'd halt the order. We'd focus on making sure we got all the information we needed for it, and then we'd send it through our line. So we went from literally 5 months worth of work in progress to we don't keep any more than a day's worth of work in progress in our facility now. So whatever we create, and we have to create a necessary buffer for ourselves based off of how our machine center line is set up now, but we have to basically create a day buffer 1 day ahead, and the next day that's consumed by subassembly. So we've very, very minimal amount of actual work in progress that's flowing through our facility. And if you go into our facility, everything you will see is packed on pallets ready to go to customers. And that's how we gauge our success now, is knowing that very little work in progress and a lot of packed pallets and finished product ready to go to a customer. And it's really cool to see it, because you'll come into our facility and it's like the machine centers are bare, and it almost feels like there's nothing going through. But then you go on to the other side and you literally just see finished product all over the place, ready to go. And that's how we do it. So we did that initially. We got through that. We started to understand that our edge bander was extremely old, and making things easier, we had 2 people hand scraping the edge band afterwards, which gives me PTSD to this day. So we invested in an edge bander in order to make that process easier for our people. And it's just kind of trickled along from there. And then, we've been fortunate enough with our relationship with Disney and who we have going on with Disney to get some really nice orders, and been able to kind of build our infrastructure based off of actual orders that have come through. Answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay.
You'd have a pretty good salesman if you had a 5-month log after you stopped taking any new orders in there.
Yeah, so our one salesman does a great job, and ultimately our referral basis does a great job, and we don't try to be more than what we are. So we have a product, we have a niche product. We don't try to get into any other industry. We try to do our product the best that we can do it. And having that focus, or having that goal, has been very, very, very powerful for us. And not trying to get in too many different things all over the place. We keep it simple, stick to our product. We used to have 6 competitors. I think we're down to 2 now, just because the other ones can't compete. And that's all we want to do. And we're just very, very focused on that. Any other questions? Everybody's ready for lunch? All right, well, thank you very much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.